I have a reputation for giving tough love advice for people who are limerent, and that means they're romantically obsessed with someone they can't have, who isn't available maybe, or who doesn't love them back. And usually I advise cutting off contact so that you can go through withdrawal from this limerence and heal and move on with your life. But what about when you truly can't get them out of your life? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Tamara, and she writes, "Dear Fairy, 4 years ago, I met a man through some friends, and I liked him very fast. He was friendly, attractive, and he paid me attention. I loved our chats. We had a lot of things in common. But in one of our chats, he told me that he would soon leave the country to go traveling and maybe move to another country. So I told myself, move on before you fall for another unavailable man. Got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to. And I'm going to read all the way through Tamara's letter so we can see what's going on, see if I can help, and I'll come back to the things I circle. So I told myself, she says, to move on before you fall for another unavailable man, because by then I had already noticed the pattern of fixating on unavailable men, although I didn't have a term. Surprisingly, on our next encounter, he made a move on me. I was so overwhelmed by the fact that this was the first man ever to return my feelings just like that, even just the attraction ones, that I gave in and we slept together. After that, it was the classic, nothing happened here, and I told myself that it was probably because he was young. I discovered afterward that he was 26, I was 31, and that he was going traveling, so he didn't want attachments. And although it sucked, I tried my best to move on. About a week before he left, I found out I was pregnant. He eventually agreed to meet me. He was avoiding me, but I texted, "We need to talk, haha." And I told him what I truly felt, that I was telling him because I was planning to have the baby and I thought it was the right thing to do, but that if he opted out, I guess, of participating, I would be fine about it. After all, we really didn't know each other, and I always thought I would be a single mom anyway. He agreed to be part of his son's life, left to see the world, and he came back for the birth. So since that, he's been there for everything. We never got together as a couple, but he's been the best father a child could have. He's also been caring, supportive, and attentive of me and my needs. At first, it was like a marriage with no sex and no shared home. Even our families got along beautifully. It's like a dream family. We've been giving our son family time as a unit, taking him on trips, going for picnics, being together at events, etc. And this comes easy as we are both so comfortable in each other's company. 2 years ago, my feelings for him came back, and when I told him about them, twice, he told me he loved me, but not in that way. Ever since, my limerence has been coming and going. On my sober moments, I see it as a blessing, and I think by sober, you mean, not limerent. You see it as a blessing because she says, we truly are not compatible as a romantic couple, and I would like a partner with different qualities and priorities. When limerence came back, I fought so hard against it, reminding me of the reality and even praying for him to find a girlfriend. And 4 weeks ago, my prayers got answered, and he found love. I didn't know it would hurt this much. I understand that the pain comes from my childhood wounds. My dad left when I was 6 and rejected me throughout my life. My mom got into a relationship soon after that, which was abusive and controlling. We were emotionally neglected, poor, abandoned often, exposed to abuse and living in constant fear. I understand that my limerence comes from a fantasy I created to protect myself, and that the father of my son played the role of my savior in my mind, especially since he is so loving. But understanding this with the brain doesn't stop the waves of emotion that drown me in victimhood. I'm excited about his relationship. I know the woman, and I know she will be an inspiration for him to keep transforming into his best version and ultimately a very good influence to our son. I'm still heartbroken, though, and cry every day asking myself, why not me and why her? But here comes my fear. In most of your videos I've watched, you suggest that the object of our limerence must be removed. How could I cut him off? He's my family. Together we are our son's foundation, and I've always been good at communicating and putting boundaries and having a healthy, open, and honest relationship. I do feel I'm healing. So do I have to cut him off? Because as of now, when he talks about his newly discovered state, I'm devastated. He tells me I'm one of the only people he can talk about his fears and hopes with, and I would love to listen, but also it hurts. I'm so lost. I'm so ready to move forward. I know it deep in my heart that I don't want him as a partner. I even tried dating, but failed as I kept thinking I saw signs of the ex. Can you help, please? I feel I'm crumbling. With love, from Tamara. Okay, I think I can help. This is not that different than something that I went through myself, Tamara. And I think you're an extraordinary person. You have a way of wanting the best for people and seeing the best for people. And this letter didn't go anywhere where I thought it was going. And I'm just proud of you. Just right off the bat, I'm proud of you. So you are so right. You have a history of going for unavailable men. You haven't had an experience of being really loved for who you are. So, wow, I so understand why you kind of got swept up into this relationship. So there's this other thing, is that when you're pregnant, and you know how exciting, you have a kid now. That's like the most wonderful thing. And when you're pregnant, and I know this because my first kid, I was not in a relationship with the dad, and we ended up forming a relationship for as long as we could. And it really was not destined to be a relationship. So I'm just here sort of on the other side of that, like having a baby and having the father come in and be in the picture, that's really positive. I mean, the circumstances you were in, having sex that is unprotected is something, a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's something very correlated with a history of trauma. I mean, it could happen to anybody, right? An unintended pregnancy, but it tends to happen more to people who have CPTSD. And my theory is, and I used to study a lot about this, my theory is, if you get dysregulated and you go a little bit unconscious, you know, that stressful feeling, there's a stressful feeling about like when you're like, uh-oh, I don't think there's enough birth control here, or I don't think I should be having this encounter with this person. What happens is, under stress, this is not a theory, this is something that's been shown in research. Under stress, people who had a traumatic childhood, which you did, their left front cortex, which is where they reason and go, no, this is not a good idea. That starts like losing. It just starts going dark on an MRI. This part, this is where the emotions are. This lights up, and it goes. That's true for like anger, anxiety, but also just sort of the excitement of sex. You could just end up with like all feeling, no reason, and I think everybody's vulnerable to a bit of that. But with CPTSD, there's definitely like a brain injury going on that makes it really hard to set boundaries where you're putting yourself at risk. So, you know, this has been going on all through history. What was so interesting to me when I was in your shoes is just that I felt like I had made a terrible mistake, but it turned out like having a child was absolutely the most beautiful, best thing that I had ever experienced. And I know the early childhood can be such a struggle, and it can be so lonely, and financially it's hard. And even people who are in like a marriage that's going to last, even they like struggle at this time. Like it's one of life's hard things, right? And if you had trauma, it's going to come up around this stuff. But also sometimes your strengths show up. Sometimes the grit that you've got shows up. And I would say that's true in my case. And I'm not trying to make this categorical, because I know some people get, postpartum depression, or the circumstances of their life become so grave that they're no longer able to care for their kids. And I do understand that. But on the whole, I think sometimes the decision to just go ahead and show up for the life you're having and raise your child and do your best is a very positive thing, and many good things can come from it, and there will be growth even if it doesn't work out with the father of the child. So I think you guys have handled this commendably. In the old days, people sort of had shotgun weddings over this, but that wasn't a happy thing. It just sounds like you're both pretty clear it's not that kind of a relationship. So here's what I want to tell you, Tamara. This thing where, well, first of all, when you said It's okay if you opt out. I did the same thing. And now I know that was coming from terrible low self-esteem. That's fine. I'll just do this. That's sometimes that's a situation that people end up in involuntarily because the father of the child doesn't show up to help. And it's a tricky situation because the father of the child doesn't always have a say in what you decide about your pregnancy, right? And that is a difficult situation, but of course that's something that can be taken into consideration before anyone has sex. So it's not your responsibility to fix that for him by just saying, oh, I'll do everything by myself. When I decided to have a kid as a single mom, I honestly had no idea that it was so stigmatized. I thought, I don't know, I guess it's because I lived in a bubble and where I worked and living in the San Francisco Bay Area. I just thought, oh, what difference does it make? And I came to learn it makes a huge difference for, and I've looked at the research in terms of like poverty, right? One of the single biggest drivers of poverty for a woman is whether or not she's married to the father of her kids. And if she's raising kids alone, that's a financially hard situation. Now, a few people, maybe you're one of them, you haven't mentioned anything about money here, so I don't know, but some people are in a position that they can manage this by themselves, sort of, but financially, emotionally, psychologically, trying to parent a kid all by yourself, it's hard. Still worth it, but it's hard. It's so much easier to have another person with you, sharing the burden. So I'm glad he's done his best to show up and do this. He's been very attentive to your needs and caring, and you say it's like a marriage, but with no sex and no shared home. So that's a major thing that's not a marriage, right? But the family's coming together and everybody working for the best interest of the child, that is like a family. That's a very good thing. And everything, once there's a child in the picture, all the math changes. Now it's about like what's best for the child. And the good news is what's best for children is what's best for you. When you've decided to be this kid's mom, your primary job is doing what's best for your child. And for you, like maintaining this relationship with this guy, the dad, has been in the best interest of the child. A kid having both parents in their lives, that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I think people downplay it. They want to downplay it, but don't downplay it. It's really an important thing. It's good. So I think you've done an incredible job of making the most of a surprise situation. Life happened, and here you are. Here you are, and you're making the best of it. And okay, so here's the part where you began to get feelings for him again. So you liked him in the first place. He didn't feel that way about you. And in life, there are always going to be such people. Most relationships end up in at least one person getting their heart broken. So this time it's your turn. And it's not always going to be your turn, Tamara. It's not always going to be your turn. But this is the person you had a child with. Maybe it's just your first child. Who knows? Who knows what's ahead for you? But you're dealing with two things here. You're dealing with a guy who's not into you, who you just like. And you're dealing with this primal force of nature where you have a child, and on just every level, like you're designed to rely on the help of a mate. You're designed to rely on the help of a mate. And so of course, they come around. There's like a very strong drive to like cohere and be a family. And as kids get older, sometimes those ties loosen, and sometimes it's easier to, co-parent from a separate position. It's hard, right? It's in the best interest of the child, and it's natural. Like you have hormones, you have brain, structures that are designed to do this, to form a family so that you can raise a child, and you're having to like work against your nature here to do this. And that's how life is sometimes. Sometimes, we don't get to do what comes naturally. There are so many examples of that. It's not a tragedy, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge. So this is what I think. Well, first of all, he's been dating somebody for 4 weeks, and you were like, I'm so glad he found this and it's forever and it's great for the kid. But I don't know, 4 weeks is way too soon to assume that this is what's going to stick. And I'm not saying that to give you hope that he's going to come around and be with you, but just that I think that this sounds maybe like your trauma is there and you're just always trying to fit yourself to whatever's going on, and you're trying to always get ahead of the ball and be like, I've got this, I'm going to have a positive attitude, I'm going to find a way to cope. And you know what, I have nothing to criticize about that. It's just that maybe it's not even, you don't always know where things are going, right? But I think you have an incredibly positive attitude and a can-do attitude. And I love that you're supportive of the woman, but go slow, because, you know, any reasonable couple needs at least a year or two to decide whether they're going to stick together. So that may or may not be happening. He's dating somebody. So one thing that's difficult, or actually, okay, I'm going to mention this. I have a course I created with my ex-husband, the father of my kids, called Positive Shared Custody, and he's a family law attorney. And right before I made courses for Crappy Childhood Fairy, we made a course, and it's 1 hour of content teaching about all the strategies we learned secretly at first, because we were at war with each other when we split up. We ended up having 2 kids, and when the second one was just a year old, he left. We had to work out all this stuff. I was panicked. I didn't have a way to make a living at first. But I pulled it together, and within a couple years, I learned how to get along with him and co-parent successfully. And so one day, when things were much more settled, he's remarried, I'm remarried, we're really happy where we are now, and I think we've done a good job of co-parenting the kids. Although I wouldn't wish on anybody for kids to have to go through the separation of their parents if they didn't have to. But we confessed to each other one day about, like, well, you know what I did when you used to yell at me? I knew that I reached a point, this is me, I reached a point where I knew I didn't want to fight anymore. You're not even fighting. I'm not really telling you this. I'm telling this for the people who are watching, who are in the situation of co-parenting with somebody they're not with. It's pretty common. And he said, oh, I'll tell you my little strategies. He knew how to, like, not push my buttons. We learned how to maintain harmony for the sake of the kids. And everything I learned about how to do that has served me so well in life, with people in general, you know, with situations, and doing the work I do now. So that course, we've just released it within the Crappy Childhood Fairy set of offerings, Positive Shared Custody. I'll put a link to it down below in the description section. You can look at it there. You know, we haven't really promoted this. It's new, it's rare. It's actually, the course is like at least 5 years old, but we took it down for a while because I was doing fairy. It's back. We offer it. Like, a lot of people have been asking for it. So you may find that helpful for co-parenting. This is what I predict for you. It's going to get easier when you begin to have some boundaries. You've been having this, you call it a dream family. And I just want to say to you, no, it's not a dream family. A dream family is when you're, you know, with somebody who's totally with you and loves you and is not, you know, living with somebody else. And so it's a positive family. It's a positive co-parenting family that's making the best of things. But there's a happiness ahead of you when you're not just like left alone by people moving on with their lives while you're raising a kid. That is a hard situation. I'm not trying to get you into self-pity or anything. Like, I know you made these decisions yourself, and here you are. But of course it's sad. Of course it's hard. And you know it's not right to be with him. So I'm glad you're supportive of his relationship. Now I want you to be supportive of your life. And your life might be single for X amount of time. We don't know. You get to go very slowly here. And now, like, when you do date, there's a whole bunch riding on it. Like, you can't just date jerks anymore, because now you have a child. Now you're the mother of a child, and there's plenty of good people who would like to be with the mother of a child. So don't worry about that. There's people who would love that, but you have to be very, very selective. Like, never again can you choose somebody who is destructive for you. I say that based on bitter experience, because I did that. When my kids were small, the relationship that I had was destructive. And luckily it ended very quickly, and it was a terrible catastrophe for my life. But that's what brought me to the point where I said, that's it, I have to learn a better way. And the better way that I learned is what I teach at Crappy Childhood Fairy. I teach it in my dating course. You might want to take that. My dating course talks about how to get very clear about what you want and need, and then how to eliminate any possibility that you're going to date people who are not what you want or need. And I know that people can deceive and lie, but I advocate going very slow. I teach a structured approach to dating so that you can get your answers, you know, about whether they fit the bill. Are they abusive? Are they alcoholic? Are they available? Are they straight? You know, things like that you kind of need to know before you get all emotionally invested. So I teach that, and you can do that. It doesn't mean it's a hurry for you to meet somebody. when you do have a relationship, it can be very bumpy for the child. So it's a big deal. I advocate getting to know somebody and not introducing them to your kid until, like at least a year, until it's quite serious and committed. It's important not to have people coming and going out of their life, or having the kids witness you getting your heart torn out by, getting, into some terrible relationship. You don't want to do that. That becomes like an adverse childhood experience for them. So it's, in a way, it's a beautiful sort of guardian angel on your life, that what's good for your child is good for you, that it needs to be somebody really good. It needs to be somebody stable and sturdy who loves you. Like, that's all good, right? So I really encourage you on that. I think that it's time to start having gentle boundaries with the dad, where you co-parent, but you don't feel, but the coupley stuff goes away. And I think him having a girlfriend, that's going to start moving that along. And then you will start to have a different relationship. I can see how, if he's single and you're single and you're hanging out all the time with a baby, how are you not going to feel like a couple with that person? I get it. You haven't done anything wrong, okay? You're doing great, and it gets better, but honor yourself and set very good boundaries for yourself. So that's it. You were worried that I'd say you have to cut off contact. No. He's the father of your child, and I didn't realize this when I had my first kid. I knew it by the time I had my second kid, but I was like, oh wow, we're family for life now. We're family for life. And sometimes the non-couple parents, when parents are not together, sometimes they drift apart. Sometimes I think what's lovely is if you can continue to live in the same geographical area and participate very fully in your child's life all the way through till they grow up. I think that's ideal. For the limerence, because you have to keep seeing him, but you need to recognize what's going on, I have a feeling that you can do this. I think you can do this. I think seeing the girlfriend is moving you along painfully, but isn't that true for all relationships that end? Like, you dread the day, oh gosh, they're going to start seeing somebody else, and I think I can't even deal with it when that happens. And then it happens, and it's like, oh, it's terrible. And then you're okay, and you move on, and you evolve. And that's going to happen for you. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. And your happiness is lying ahead of you. If you love this topic, I have a video lined up that's called Limerence Flourishes When Grief and Loneliness Fill Your Life. And I've got that video lined up right here, and I will see you very soon.